so Michael Mann's Ferrari, takes place in 1957 and follows the central character of Enzo Ferrari, played here by Adam Driver, who does a pretty decent job with trying to, pull off like a little bit of the Italian accent here. Not a great job, but compared to some of the other actors here, he does a much better job, I think, than some of the other actors. So the film follows a very crucial point in Enzo's career, trying to establishing Ferrari as like a big name car brand. Like basically, he's like his one big shot to kind of like prove himself feels like it's going to be this big upcoming race, I'm trying to pronounce correctly, the Malay Miglia. I think I'm butchering the title here. I know they say it in the film, but it's tough for me to say. But it's basically it's a 1,000-mile race to kind of prove who's going to be the expert driver over some, basically like racing across Italy on this very long and arduous, race to try to prove yourself. So Enzo figures that, hey, we need a good driver for that. So how about we hire Alfonso de Portego, played by Gabriel Leon. And it feels like, like this is going to be the racer to do it. Like after much testing, trying to find like the perfect racers, to represent his cars, feels like, yes, this guy's going to do it. This guy's got, like the essence of being like, a star race car driver. Let's put him in the driver's seat and let's do it with him. Now, while all this is going on, Enzo Ferrari is having a bit of trouble in his personal life. Namely, he's not, it's basically his marriage kind of feels like it's crumbled with his wife, Laura, played by Penelope Cruz here, where they, it feels like they're not marriage partners anymore. They're just business partners. Like at this point, Laura pretty much knows like Enzo probably has like another woman on the side, and she's just, she views him more as like a business partner than anything else, and kind of distrusts him more than anything else. Like, and she's like, Penelope Cruz just throws herself into this role, especially with like one scene early on where she basically is just wielding a gun around their estate, just like, I what can you say? Like she likes her gun and she likes to kind of fire it off around Enzo, much to his chagrin. And of course, as we soon learn, Enzo did have another woman on the side, with a woman called Lena, played by Shailene Woodley, and they both had a child together that has been kept in secret. And I'll say this, like Cruz is really great in her performance. Driver, I feel, does well. For most of the time, I feel like he holds his accent pretty well. Shailene Woodley just doesn't really work here, unfortunately. Like, she's trying with that Italian accent, but it dips in and out so much that it becomes distracting. Thankfully though, she's, even though she's like playing, the role of like the other woman here, she's not as present in the film as much. Like she's there throughout, but not as much as like you get to see with like Penelope Cruz or as with Adam Driver, even with Gabriel Leon. And I like the way that the film is kind of paced between like, divvying up between, Enzo's personal life and his professional life, and a little bit of crossover in between there. Like you see a few sweet moments where Enzo is with his kid, and, he's showing him all like these blueprints for his car design, saying like, oh, this is how you make a better car. Hey, do you see anything that we could do to fix this? Like, yes, that's what we do. And there's a charming, heartfelt moment there. But it's also very somber moment as well, because you realize that Enzo and Laura were trying for where they had a kid but they lost their child, and now when they can't have another one, Enzo basically wants to go to another woman. And it's depressing because more or less Enzo's mother kind of agrees with him on this level, mainly because like she's all about wanting an heir for the business, where it feels like legacy and business have kind of like ruined these people, where they don't really feel like themselves anymore, to the point where it kind of makes sense that Enzo Ferrari would just bury himself in this work, of trying to like be the best and trying to rise above all else, feeling that as long as I get the car right, as long as I can win this race, everything is going to be just right. And then, of course, for those who are familiar with the story, Alfonso does not survive the race. He has a horrific crash that ends up killing lots of people, and it's brutal and it's shocking, and it's that chilling climax there that reminds you how, you can bury yourself in as much work as you want, but, anything could go wrong at any moment, and, you could lose it all just like that. And it's a very sobering moment, I think, for Enzo to kind of like realize something a little bit more about his life while kind of watching it all crumble around him, and just realizing that, you kind of have to make the best with what you got, and more or less, but you kind of like see like the decay going on within like this guy who was very obsessed with cars, and it kind of created this very like rocky legacy for himself. And I kind of went back and forth on this film because like the pacing is pretty good. Like I said, I like the deviation between the personal life and like the life of, establishing a car brand. The racing scenes, which I imagine quite a few people are going to come to this film for, are decently shot. They're a bit they're a bit rickety here and there, but I feel like they're appropriate for where they're trying to like, showcase like, like the speed and the grit of it all, because you want to feel like, you're in the driver's seat of these cars that, like if you're not careful with them, they could easily just topple over and just, end up, you could end up dead within these things, which they established pretty early on. You have to be skilled with these cars, because you're not, accidents are going to happen, and there's going to be some pretty dire consequences for it. And I mean, I like that, like that the camera is like a little bit shaky in some of those scenes, like not like, all over the place, but, having like those bumps in there where it feels like, these cars are going fantastic speeds, and that they might not be able to hold if they don't have an expert driver behind the wheel making sure that they're running properly. So the way they're shot, I feel like they're pretty good. I went back and forth a little bit on the big climax here where you have the big car crash here, because it does show a lot of the brutality that came with that crash, which is a little bit questionable because like it's shocking. And it's a little bit of a gamble, that scene, and I kind of feel like it mostly pays off, just because I feel like there's a hideous undercurrent throughout the film that you want to kind of see kind of explode in that climax and showcase the horror of what happens, when like an accident would happen like this on the track, and to prove that, you can try to build up your legacy as much as you want, but, it's going to, much like Enzo and, his first son, you could lose it instantly, just like that. It's a fast industry, and if you move that fast and, you're struggling for money as well, which, Enzo does, even though they established that Enzo really didn't have to put the struggle on, but he had so much dignity that he felt like he had to kind of, put his like kind of, put everything he had into this to try to like prove himself. And which is a little bit sad, just because like, you realize he didn't have to do this, and that if he didn't, some people might be alive, even though like, it's something that he couldn't quite foresee within that scenario. So like it's this great highlight about, this guy who tried to have like all this pride and tried to cover up his shortcomings, and for as much as like the Ferrari brand kind of like succeeded, past these events, and went on to become a bigger company, it still had all these problems, both with how they ran races, and with Enzo himself, and how he ran his company and his family. And yeah, I like the way that it highlights this troubling aspect of this character. And Driver's performance is really good. Crew's performance is really good. And Woodley's really isn't. But like I said, went back and forth on this film, and ultimately I kind of dug it for what it was trying to explore with Enzo Ferrari, and I think just the performances alone are what made the film work for me, in addition to some decently shot racing scenes that did kind of feel like they were kind of like amping up the grit of what you wanted to feel, of what I almost kind of feel like Mann wanted us to feel within that race. So yeah, Ferrari, it's definitely not Michael Mann's best film, but it's a pretty good film about trying to explore this both aspects of Enzo Ferrari as this troubled family man and an even more troubling businessman.